of video game companies bring out old games and make them exactly like they were when they first came out and they were first popular and expect to see more success than what they previously had. It's weird. If you had a game that was marginally popular, sold marginally well, and let's say this just so happened to be a game that really only initially sold its first game because you bundled it with a demo of an even more popular game. I think you guys know where I'm going here. I'm talking about Crackdown, and Crackdown 3 in particular. I wonder why this game was created. Was it created for Crackdown fans exclusively? Did Xbox Game Studios think they had more Crackdown fans than they actually had? I don't know. But we all know this game did not sell that well regardless of Game Pass, and the game had middling to mediocre reviews. Most of these reviews were basically saying the same things, just the same gameplay, no innovation, not evolving the gameplay loop or the gameplay mechanics. And that kind of brings me back to my initial question: why release a game that is marginally better than the very first game in the series? So let's talk about Crackdown. Is it worth bringing the game back for a Crackdown 4? And let's also talk about why, if you decide to bring Crackdown back for a fourth game, what's it going to look like? And so, one, I would say for the first question, is it worth bringing Crackdown back for another game? Yeah, it's an IP that has a name. It is an IP that is recognizable, and it's an IP that people pay attention to. Unfortunately, with the last game, people pay attention to it for the wrong reasons, but it's something that if you make a good game, it's going to get a lot of attention of the hardcore community as well as casual gamers due to its aesthetic and its gameplay. If they decide to bring Crackdown back for a fourth game, what's it going to look like? Now, my idea is that if you're going to bring this game back, you need to innovate off of this. So I want to quote something that Matt Booty said shortly after he elevated to his current role. And he was saying in an interview with Polygon that in regards to Crackdown, that, quote, "we really want to make games that have the opportunity to become a franchise that can sit next to Halo, sit next to Gears." This is in relation to talking about Crackdown. To continue on, he says, now that doesn't mean that we want every one of our studios to have an IP factory and that they all have to make sequels. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we want a game to have the potential to give birth to a world that could expand, create characters that could have multiple iterations. We want that depth and that richness that could go on and do other things, yada yada yada. So if that's what Xbox Game Studios wants from their IP, then you're going to need to take Crackdown and you're going to need to make some major improvements. And I got some suggestions. There's almost no difference in the stories between Crackdown 1, Crackdown 2, and Crackdown 3. You are a superhuman cop. You're trying to get rid of gang activity in separate regions of the city, and it's always just one big city. So here's my proposal with the story. Ditch the one city concept. It's old, it's small scale. You need, regards to say like movies, when they always go to a sequel, they know in order for the sequel to be better than the original, you gotta go bigger. If you got a movie with a lot of explosions, you need to make those explosions bigger. Stakes have to be higher. You have to raise the stakes. Crackdown 1 through 3 being in one city is not raising the stakes. Now, my idea is broaden Crackdown to a global scale. Have the player travel to multiple cities. On a technical level, we won't need multiple cities to be the same size as the cities in the previous games. Let's break it up. How about a third of the size, but with very distinct differences in the architecture and cultural designs of how the city looks. So the players are going to these cities, although they're smaller, they don't really care that they're smaller because they're seeing it as a completely different area in a different entity than they did with the previous areas. And so the fact that the city is smaller than previous cities isn't going to matter. Instead, the usual story of one cop taking on all these different gangs and then finally being able to take on that gang's leader. Let's blow it up. Let's raise the stakes. Take the approach from the opening cinematic from Crackdown 3. Let's turn that up too. Instead of your plane getting bombed, let's have your main headquarters being bombed in a terrorist attack. Let's explore where these superhuman steroid-infused cops are really coming from. Let's get into some lore. Let's build up some lore. That's how you get a community to really start caring about your games. That you have more in store than just very basic, very shallow storytelling. But we'll have your main headquarters. It gets bombed. You kill the vast majority of the agents. And let's say the only agents left alive are those who weren't at the headquarters at the time they were off on a mission. Let's continue with Terry Crews. Terry Crews was a good idea in Crackdown 3, but he just wasn't enough. He wasn't enough to save a very stale format. Let's add Terry Crews, but with like 2 more protagonists. The kind of archetypes we could use is like a very skilled female and another male with like a different kind of body type to Crews, but still athletic, still looks the part. I recommend they go with like, probably this would, as far as voice acting, this probably would not work at all, but Emily Blunt I think is someone I think that would be really good for that kind of role. You probably wouldn't be able to get her considering how big of a movie actor she is. Maybe someone similar. And then also I think someone like Anthony Starr, who is from Banshee, the Showtime TV show, as well as The Boys. He plays the Homelander. He would be perfect for this kind of role. You just really need to add 2 more strong actors who bring a different feel to the table than Terry Crews, and that will really boost the narrative. Give them some dialogue that kind of interacts with one another. Let them play off one another. Hey, these are experienced actors. Let them ad-lib and just do their own thing, put their own spin on it. So these 3 agents will be leading the remaining forces to get revenge, and you can create your own character if you want, but regardless of that, if you create your own character, you'll still have these other 3 characters that are doing their own thing and also showing you their personalities. It will still be similar in objectives to previous Crackdown games, although I would just completely cut out all the racing crap. Like, I don't care about any of that. I don't know anyone who cares about racing objectives and running your car over ramps through big circles and stuff. That's really old, played out, obsolete gameplay. Cut that kind of stuff out. But make it so the objectives are still like, we need to take down this factory. Unraveling a criminal organization. Let's focus on those kind of objectives. Let's get the villain some personality beyond just being your typical one-note, not multidimensional at all criminals. Give them a personality that allows you to actually feel something about killing them beyond, hey, it's what the game is telling me I need to do. But I do believe, since we're going global, let's have these criminals be in different cities all over the world. Like have one in Singapore, or one in Russia, one in Africa, one in South America. Like you would have to go in different areas, and then see also that goes back to different cities with different architecture to take out these enemies, and so it will be a different feel each time. In today's market, most games need to have, or they not need to have, but they do have, and it works, a hub for you to operate from, a base of operation. I recommend taking the design of the ship that got destroyed in the opening cinematic for Crackdown 3. Use that as your base of operations. Really just expand and flesh that out. The player will have a choice of choosing which lieutenant to eliminate first. So like you would have with the previous games in the city, you can just choose who you want to take down first if you want to. And say, similar to XCOM, you'll be able to see like this global map where they could set course and fly to that destination. whether you can do that manually or not, that doesn't matter. But just being able to be on a ship that narrative-wise explains how you're able to get to different destinations despite the narrative, and then also gives you a place where you have a base of operations. You can choose which weapons or which vehicles that you want to start with when you get to that destination. The orbs that help you get better, get stronger, get faster, that we can keep that. But look, it's silly. In today's gaming environment, it's just too silly, ridiculous, and unrealistic. They either remove it completely or transition it into why and how it develops your character. Explain why the orbs are there in the first place. Explain what they do. Here's an example. You could say the agents possess technology that allows them to absorb the matter of objects they kill or destroy, and you have that improve themselves. Once that matter has been destroyed, they transform it into an orb, and they can draw that orb into themselves and make themselves stronger. Make it a reason why this is happening. Make it so, like, this is what makes these cops distinct and different from regular human beings. They have this ability. Let's go into combat for real. The biggest change needs to come here, and I think that's the main reason why this game has been so stale with Crackdown 3. Just the combat is just really, nothing has changed in it at all since the first game. It's still a lot of enemies, just shooting a lot of guns, that auto lock, that makes it easy to just wipe enemies out. You're just running and gunning, just blowing stuff up. We can keep that same feel. Keep that same feel to the combat, but just make it operate differently. Give it a little bit of a skill gap. And I think in order to do that, you're gonna need to change the way movement works. Let's keep the outrageous guns, keep the bombastic explosions, keep the overall feel of being way too powerful for just a couple of enemies and needing to be overwhelmed in order to be beaten, but change the flow of combat to evolve. And I think that how they can do that is they can emulate the way Warframe's movement is. Warframe has a very free-flowing feel. It's parkour elements to it that you don't really see anywhere else. And I can imagine combining the ability to launch your agent through the air and have him fly, not necessarily fly through the air, but just parkouring off of walls, launching themselves left and right, and being able to just do that easily with a controller or a keyboard while keeping the same guns and weapons and just raining down destruction on enemies. I think that will really, really work. And I would say get rid of the aggressive auto-lock aiming for just a simple aim assist. Will also make it a little bit more difficult instead of just it being just a boring, easy campaign to go through. I would completely eliminate the PvP. That multiplayer mode, no one really played it with Crackdown 3. No one cares about it. If it's gone in the next game, no one's going to complain. I'll make this, instead of 1-player or 2-player co-op, a 3-player co-op game, so that you could actually have people using all 3 of the main voiced protagonists. Even if you do play solo, I would say have the 2 other main characters be AI controlled NPCs. That will still allow that banter and character development to continue while you play the game and not just occur during cutscenes. So that's my idea. And I'm not saying it absolutely needs to happen this way, but what I will say is that doing a Crackdown 4 and having it be very little difference than what we saw with Crackdown 3 just shouldn't happen. If that's going to be what it's going to be, you just need to just not do a sequel, period. And if Xbox Game Studios really wants Crackdown to be mentioned in the same breath as their biggest IPs, which are Halos, Gears, and Forza, you just can't keep going back to the same old well. What you have with the current format of this game isn't on that level and never will be. So you need to ramp it up. Hey, maybe ditch the cell shaded look, get more realistic character models, make it a massive AAA endeavor. Those 3 games that you claim you want them to be like, they're massive AAA endeavors. So make this one a massive AAA endeavor. If not, just don't bother. Let the IP die and then move on to something else. So yeah, like I said, that's my video. Hit the like button if you liked it. Hit the dislike button if you didn't like the idea. I'm fine with it. Hit the subscribe button if you like my content, and I'm out. Peace.